Hello, my friends. Oh, sorry we missed last week. I was sick in Mexico, but I've made it briefly here to New York, on my way to London tomorrow, and getting this in so we can stay regular and keep on schedule. I'm just going to go ahead and grab Jon right now. Yo.
What's up?
Oh, man. How are you?
Doing all right. How you doing? How you feeling?
I'm doing all right. I told you this. I didn't shower it all over my Instagram, but I was in Mexico and got the Mexican stomach bug.
Oh,
out for like actually yesterday was the first day I felt better in 8 days.
wow.
But 4 or 5 days of roughness. I was down there for a friend's bachelor party actually, and then was like, I'll just extend my trip and chill out. I got my laptop. I'm just like get a nice little spot on the beach, do some work, organize some sessions, prep for my trip to London. And like the night that all my friends left, I was like, I'm not feeling so good. And then spent the next 5 days just,
I hope it was worth it though. I hope whatever you ate was worth it.
Yeah, I mean, what I assume it was probably some ice or something like that. So I'm sure it was not worth it. But you know what? Look, I'm alive. There's worse things in the world. I guess I was gonna say there are worse places to be than on the beach in Mexico. But that being said, I didn't really go on the beach. I just kind of just laid in my room. But I'm feeling better now. I'm still a little low energy, but good to be back. And like I said, I'm here in New York for like a day just to grab some things, and then I'm gonna fly to London tomorrow, work there, go to Paris.
How long are you gonna stay?
I'm not sure. I think I'm going to do 2 or 3 weeks in London, not doing like a super jam-packed writing trip, although I got some days writing with people. I got some productions to do. So I might stick around London. I might utilize the location to pop over to Paris or pop to Barcelona, just like get a little travel.
Probably do that. No, you should definitely do that.
I know how much you love Paris, as do I. So I will certainly head over there. And it's funny, I posted something when I was in Asheville where, some sort of like meme language thing about some people go to the Louvre, I go to the Moog Museum. And I'm going to go to Paris.
Wait, where is that?
The Moog Museum in Asheville, North Carolina, because that's
where
Asheville, because that's where Bob Moog moved after he sold Moog and then did his next couple decades of stuff. He moved to a little town outside of Asheville and did a lot of great work there. So there's I think the Moog factory is there, and there is a separate, I think Bob Moog Foundation runs it, a little Moog museum. I highly recommend anybody who's a synth nerd or a music technology history nerd would really enjoy it. It's a little museum. It's like it's like $8.95, and you just walk around, but they have things you can play with and lots of videos. And for people like you and I who really love the nerd and the history and the tech, it was a pretty cool spot. I was out there a month or so ago for my cousin's wedding, and it was a blast. But yeah, nice. I'm looking forward to going to London. Gonna kind of try to just see a bunch of people, maybe go to Paris and do the thing. How have you been? I haven't seen you in a couple of weeks.
I know. Yeah, been good. Keeping busy between Atmos and stereo mixing, which has been fun. I know, like 2 weeks ago, we went on a little Atmos tangent, so we won't do that again. I think
it was much appreciated. I think a lot of people are, as we said at the end of that, I'm sure we will have many more Atmos conversations because people are curious about it. But sorry, yeah.
Got a big one coming out this weekend on Friday. So after it drops, we can have you listen to it, and then we should talk about it.
Nice.
Next week.
Did you also do the stereo?
No.
Oh, interesting. We'll do that. So have you been doing how much stereo versus Atmos stuff have you been doing?
Still more stereo.
Yeah.
But a fair amount of Atmos stuff.
And keeping busy with all that, the usual, just like a couple a day, just jamming through it?
Nah, at the moment, it's like a 1 a day, 1 to 2. Yeah. Not like super overwhelmed. I have a project that should start any week. That'll be kind of a lock-in for a bit to do a whole album. I think it's like 20 plus songs. So I couldn't really take on too much knowing that that's coming. So kind of just waiting for that. Yeah, I'm actually really pumped about that. Like artists actually flying in to LA to do it. So we'll do a lot of it together. And I'm really pumped about that, actually. Haven't done that in a while.
What is it?
And then we'll do the Atmos of that as well afterwards too. So
nice. Is it a project with lots of different producers?
No, actually, it's a pretty tight crew. Same people do most of the stuff. I don't know if anybody's going to be added to the usual suspects, like on a record or two, but it's finished by the same crew. Always.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, there were a few questions this week and in the last few weeks about album and the idea of an album and cohesion of an album, which I'm sure we've touched on a few times before. I don't know, have you listened much to the Kendrick album?
Yeah, it's funny because I was texting with this artist a couple of weeks ago after I knew it was actually getting locked in to do, and I was just like, what have you been listening to? Like, what's inspiring? Because like I'm not feeling a bunch of the stuff that's dropping right now, and it's a rapper, so I just wanted to know like what they're feeling, and it's the same thing. It was like I'm just waiting for Kendrick to drop to be inspired because there's really nothing right now. And I just wanted to get like a grasp on sonically, like where they're heading. And, it wasn't, there was nothing exciting, and a couple of big records had dropped that time, but nothing really hit. Like since Pusha T, kind of nothing was really, inspiring me. And then, he felt the same way, and Kendrick dropped, and it's like, okay, a little palate cleanser for the industry.
Yeah, I mean,
sonically, arrangement-wise, lyrically, performance, pretty much everything was nailed. And I guess that's what happens when you wait 5 years to release something, Yeah,
and you're very, very meticulous about it. I mean, I've listened to it 3 or 4 times all the way through at this point. It might be my favorite Kendrick album. It doesn't quite have the like straightforward songs and bangers of previous albums. There's going to be fewer songs that I put on. Yeah, there's fewer songs that I'm going to put on playlists, although I immediately put a bunch on the one Spotify playlist I publish. But as a piece of art and an arc and an album, which I know that the older the person is, I feel like the more nostalgic they are for albums. And those of us that make records and make albums, and you said you're about to start an album, and that feels exciting. It feels great to make a body of work with an artist, and there's something as a producer, as a person who grew up listening to albums, I really still love that form. And even though they're calling this a double album, it's only an hour long, so it's really like a sort of a half.
It's a two-part album.
A two-part album, exactly. Yeah, it is so incredible. It's the first time I've listened to an album in a really long time and cried near the end of it. That next to last song, where with Beth from Portishead singing the hook, when it gets to that third verse, and he raps very softly and very like in your ear, and it's really intense. And then when he almost gets like a preacher at the end, and it gets so intense, I just fucking wept, man.
Dynamic.
It's so dynamic.
Song within each song, and then song to song.
Arrangement wise, sonically, like with the space between pieces, there's times where they just let the instrumental run in the middle of the song for an extra 4 or 8 bars. And it really is powerful.
Oh, it's so powerful. I love that. You just called that out.
Good.
Because sometimes I'll have that happen to me on a record that I'm mixing, or if homie's sharing a record and there's like 4 or 8 bars where that's happening, and I'm like, do we need it? Like, is it? But it's not giving that kind of sensation that the moments like that in Kendrick's album did. It's like there's something specific about those moments where it's hard to pull off. And I think there was even a couple of moments on the Weekend record where he tried to do it, and I just didn't feel it. Like, I don't know if it was the tameness of the mixes and how like glued together everything was. And it just.
Well, one of the reasons I think it works so well, and from a songwriting perspective, I talk about this a lot when I'm producing stuff or working with artists, that if you make a lyric great or have a dense lyrical part, creating lots of space after that justifies the density, and vice versa. The first 2 songs on the Kendrick album, he is rapping fast, and there's a lot of lyric, a lot of density. And if you go from that into more density, it is exhausting to the listener. And sometimes that's intentional to actually to rapid fire lots of intense lyrics and really, you know, make people feel almost anxiety. But then to give breath, give space, have Eckhart Tolle come in and kind of like softly say a few phrases, to hear his longtime partner, fiance, baby mama, Whitney, coming in and out. Like, there's all this ebb and flow. You talk about dynamics. There's lots of ways to think about dynamics beyond just, you know, loud and quiet. And boy, is the album brilliant with that. It flows, I think, so well. I think, you know, I've read some of the critical things, because there's obviously, you know, Kodak Black on there, who's a guy who's gotten into a lot of trouble and is a very complicated, contradictory person. And it's interesting to hear Kendrick, even the dynamics of that, of, you know, speaking to the culture. And not that we, you know, we try to stay away on this from talking about politics and things like that. But yeah, I think it's really brilliant how he's put together the dynamics of all of these things, of contradictions, of loud and quiet, fast and slow, angry and soft, introspective and preachy. Like, there's just so much in the album. And I feel like a few more listens and I'm going to continue to discover a lot of new things. I think it's really incredible.
I love that you said it. You might be your favorite Kendrick album. I think that it quite possibly is the, you know, the peak so far, and every record he's put out has always been the peak so far, and he's just pushing himself. And whether that's true or not for him and for everyone, it doesn't even really matter. It's just that if anybody feels that way, that's just true artistry moving forward and trying to push their own boundaries. And that's exciting. It's exciting for a fan. It's probably exciting for a team to witness, like, what's this actually. Also, imagine the anticipation for everyone that knew, you know, what could make the album, and then getting a text that's like, yo, you made the album, directly from, like, someone had posted that. I don't remember who it was, so I don't want to call it out who it was, and posted like, yo, you made the album, like a day before from K Dot. You're like, whoa, imagine getting that text. Like, just as a music maker and a fan of that artist, like, that's got to be the moment. You know, you cried listening to it. I hope that person cried when they received that text. Like, that is such a gift to touch. Like, you know, I shouted out the engineer crew on that, because I think that for the first time in a long time, and I was going to jump on something you said earlier about how exhausting, like, overly dense sections to sections can be. A lot of the times with pop music, you know, it's a singles based industry at the moment. If you had a album worth of densely bright singles, it's going to exhaust you. You can't get through the album in one listen. You might never be able to get through the album in in multiple sittings. When you have a record with the density of meaning and intention that Kendrick puts into everything he does, the engineering team steps out of the way, and it's one of the first times in a while that you actually hear engineers at their best doing the job they're supposed to do, which is get out of the way of the art. And a lot of the times I'll comment on a mix because I think it gets in the way of the potential compelling nature of a song and of a performance. And that's why I don't like certain mixes, not because I just think they sound bad. Like, what is bad? Bad is subjective. I'm usually calling out the distraction to the record. And maybe the record doesn't have any sort of emotional density or intention, and then the mix can be what it is. And I usually will refer to that as an unremarkable mix. Like, it doesn't make it better or worse. It's just a mix, and it sounds kind of like a rough mix, and there's nothing that's jumping out at you. Everything's contained. There are moments in those records like that, just there's a sound that just, it's like a Bruce Swittian on Michael Jackson records. Sounds that just jump, grab your attention and come back. The vocal is active. The vocal is not compressed and held, and it's moving. All of these things are the engineers getting out of the way, not making moves, not doing things. And that is hard. It's hard for your ego to step back and say, I don't need to do something. Like, that's the thing. The thing is to not do the thing. And he's doing the thing. The producers are doing the thing. Anyway, I don't know how to stress that more. It's the first record in a while that made me go, yes, engineers. Yes. And not one, I have no notes. Like, could I rip it apart in a sonic sense of, like, for fun? Like, I'm sure I could find something that could be, just for fun, but it would make no sense to do that. And that's when you know that an album is completed, when you're listening to it as a fan. And as a music maker, that's very hard to do.
Yeah, I totally agree. And there's a lot of sonic things about the album that I'm discovering on repeat listens that I find really interesting. By the way, so do you know, because I know that I assume Ali did a number of the songs.
I think he did only 2.
He only
Manny
did 2,
did the majority.
Manny did a bunch, and then
James
I think Beach Noise at least mixed the Heart Part 5, and I imagine, and they're relative. I don't know them. I guess we have some mutual friends. I was looking at their Instagram, which I'm sure is popping off right now. They're amazing. I mean, sonically and musically, sounds like they're a collective of very real musicians doing really interesting stuff. Yes. But I had not heard of them before. But apparently they mix the Heart Part 5, and they're mixing some of their stuff. So what's cool about the album to me in that sense is that there's a lot of different people working on it. And it actually sounds also like, and it sounds like a cohesive work of art, which is, you got to give credit to Kendrick on that.
Kendrick.
When you have Kendrick Lamar, his vocal is going to lead everything. And so people talk about cohesive albums. I feel like the vocal is going to be everything, especially, a lot of times you're thinking about albums with lots of different producers from the pop sense, but from the hip hop sense as well. And this album is so diverse sonically, where there's piano and strings really leading songs, and then there's organic instruments, and then there's like straight up trap stuff, and then there's like kind of future 808 synth with some snaps, and it's really it's a whole spectrum, and yet feels cohesive. And one of the things that I found really interesting is on repeat listens, there are a few songs where you can tell Kendrick's rapping vocals were recorded at different times, and some of them sound like they were either either not pitched, but maybe stretched a little bit, or maybe pulled in from different sessions, or maybe recorded on an iPhone or something. But the engineer did a great job at making it not feel like, you can do that thing where you record in a bunch of different microphones for deliberate sonic differences, but it didn't sound like that was the intent. And yet they made it cohesive enough. Like I can't remember which song it is, but there's a song where the whole vocal sounds the same. And I only know this because, we have this sort of ears where we listen and go, the high end just changed a little bit on that lead vocal. Yeah. Oh, interesting. That's not the same recording. They did that in a different day at a different time, but yet it works, and it doesn't sound too different. And maybe it's very interesting. It definitely doesn't feel like a guy went into a studio for a couple of weeks with the same team and made stuff, and yet it feels very cohesive. There's like I said earlier, there's a couple questions about making cohesive albums, and boy, does this sound cohesive, and yet it does not sound like one sonic through line. It's very interesting.
I heard a rumor. I believe that the source that on Family Ties, he recorded, and he probably does this for a lot, and we talked about this on a couple of episodes because I'm so into the 2 mic thing. Apparently for his like low voice personality, kind of like, weird vocals that he might format or just does like a talking thing, he's using a U67. And then when he does his higher thing where he's like doing his normal, like his Kendrick flow that's up high and pitched up, that's on a C800, and he has both mics in the booth, and he goes back and forth, and he's doing a different personality because that's Kendrick's thing. He's coming at things like, when I listen to the lyrics, I feel him as an actor in a sense, like he's hitting all of these.
And he's playing characters.
These archetypes, and he's
obviously
playing.
There's him as Kendrick, and then there's him as different characters and enunciating all. Whenever he says brother and makes the R happen, both in Family Ties on the album, I love that voice. I love that pop.
And it's cool to know whether that's him, whether it's his choice or the engineering choice that has convinced him to do that. He's using a different microphone for a different tonal accent and perspective. And then you don't have to process that much later. Like Kendrick always sounds under-processed in the best way. He just sounds real. He sounds like the best rapper alive. He doesn't sound overhyped. I never hear a Kendrick album where I'm like, that's like the greatest vocal sound because of all the EQ that, like what? No one cares. It just sounds like Kendrick is in a room. And that's a tribute to Matt Schaefer. Great engineer. Been with Kendrick for a long time.
That's his main engineer for?
Yeah.
I don't know Matt.
The guy. And Maddie's been doing it for so long, and there's trust. And I don't know who made the call, to do the multiple mic thing, but it makes so much sense. This is a different personality. Why are we capturing on the same thing? That's why I get in on the background vocal thing. Why are you recording on the same mic when it's supposed to be a different character? If you want a bunch of the same character, who are you? I mean, what? That's not how music was made. Like, I don't understand that perspective. So I love learning that the greatest artists are still doing the tricks that made every bit stand out, right? You listen to Beach Noise and their production and their layering and their arrangement. The songs that they're on musically are arranged like some of the greatest records, just manipulated in some weird way. Like, we're going to reverse and mush this thing and slow the attack on this sound so you can't quite grasp what the actual sound source was. Like that first record, when the orchestra just starts like spreading around and swirling.
Yeah,
like,
it's panned in strange ways, and it totally...
That is not normal, and that has never been done before, right? Like, it's been done, that effect has been done, but not in that way, and it's mind-bending. And I don't want to know how they did it. Like we talked about once, like I want to know what Dale does on a master. Like, why not? I don't want to know how Beach Noise makes their stuff.
See, I want to
hire Beach Noise.
I want to do all it.
Yeah. I just want to hire them.
Do everything.
I want to be an A&R and then just be like, yo, get Beach Noise in the room to do what they do best, right? And then like get Matt Rad in the room to do what he does best. Like, I don't want to think about why they did it and how they did it. It's just like, they're the shit right now for whatever that is. And they've probably been doing that and harnessing that for a long time, and it made the main stage, last week.
I got to say, I think
if everyone can't tell, we're very big fans of Kendrick Lamar and this album.
It's a great album, and it's got lots of layers, and it's fantastic. I say other than great songs, which I think fundamentally is what moves me the most. The thing that moves me and inspires me the most is when people do something in a production or sonically or musically that I'm like, I would never have chosen to do that. Boy, is that cool. And there's a bunch of moments like that on this album. I've talked ad nauseum, I feel like, about Dylan Brady and some of his production and just the like insanity of what he and the people in the hyperpop world are doing. But what I love about this Kendrick album is, like you said, Beach Noise and others who are producing. And again, I don't know enough about who's doing what on these tracks because there's beautiful piano and string arrangements. And yet sonically, they're doing things that I don't really understand why they chose to do that. And it works, and it's beautiful, and it's strange and a little jarring and a little haunting. And,
I wish I could remember song names because there's a piano that's sticking out of my head that comes in at like the best moment and it just made me cry. And I've been listening to the album on my speakers with the black screen on, which is how I mix. I don't like looking at screens. So I don't know the song names, but there's so many beautiful sporadic piano moments that are doing exactly
piano
what
is amazing.
And
sonically it's great. It's not bright.
It's not, but it's full, and it's the piano character I wonder like what the concept was for the piano character in that, something there's some intention there. The piano is doing something that emotionally no other instrument can do on this record. That's very specific.
Whoever's playing it is great. Whoever's arranging it is great. I assume a similar crew of people. And it makes me think a lot about, one of the things I make mistakes. One of the mistakes I make, or one of the tendencies I have, which I'm always trying to not overdo as a mixer, is over-brightening things. And again, we've talked about this, but part of it is because I spent so much time making rock albums with organic instruments, trying to compete with people starting to make records in computers. So learning from Eric Valentine and like making drums bright and compressing snare drums and making the attack really. So I got into all these habits of brightening. And also when producing, there's lots of sound design stuff. Like I'm going to EQ like crazy. So when I mix, I start to reach for things like that. And it's always really inspiring, especially listening to hip hop records. Kendrick being a great example. One of my other favorites, Timbaland, when he does it well, like Dirt Off His Shoulder, records like that, where the track does not have a lot of high end in it.
Mid-range, then texture,
yes,
character.
And then when you have a vocal come on top of it, the vocal does not need to be hyped to be incredibly clear. And boy, is there a lot of that on the Kendrick album.
That's what everybody wants. It's arrangement practice as well as good monitoring and understanding balances, right? We talk about this a lot. People brighten to create some sort of perceived energy that just isn't in their sound choice or in their part. It's just like a mediocre part feels better when it's brighter to a lot of people. to an A&R.
And in isolation too, when you solo things, I mean, that's at least for me, and I've seen other people do, you solo something and you're like, I'm going to make that brighter so it sticks out more. And then you put it in the context and all of a sudden everything's kind of bright and knobby. It's as they say, it's a mix of the sounds. It's not a, that's why we call it mixing.
Well, that's actually an interesting segue. I wanted to talk about this song that just came out that I mixed for Tate McRae, this What Would You Do record, because my friend Josh Murdy called, and he's like historically a rock guy and toured with a bunch of bands, and he's a great producer. And he called me to tell me like he listened to it, and that there were so many choices that I made that he, just what you said, like I would have never done on a record with guitar driven, like loud guitar pop music. And Blake Slatkin, who produced it, and I had this conversation of like, this is a pop record. I don't want the guitars to feel like a rock record, but it has to be just enough. Like to me, it's more like a No Doubt, Gwen Stefani type record where it's kind of bright and exciting, but the guitars are more mid-range focused and have that dense character on it. But I don't want to compete the vocal top end with the vocal top end. So they're kind of warm sounding, but they're full and they're forward. And it's not a traditional rock approach to a mix. And the vocal's really loud. And he's like, I would have never thought you can get away with a vocal that loud, but I can't get enough of it. Like the vocal, it's just in my ears. I'm like, yeah, it's the point. Like if the vocal, because the vocal to me isn't loud on that record. There's just nothing competing with it. So it just shines on top. Right? And it doesn't have to be hyped to shine on top. And yeah, it's kind of bright, but it's not bright by being additive. It's bright by just being in its place. And I love that he called us to talk about it for like a half hour. We're talking about the mix and decisions that apparently I made that he wouldn't have made. And I love that because I didn't make the decisions thinking I'm going to make decisions because for any other reason, because except for that was my decision that was made. I don't really know how to put that in some more, packaged way. I'm going to make decisions that I want to make based on instinct. And then it's up to you to determine if that's going to be something that you would do or not do. Is it going to work at radio? I don't know. Just got asked for a bunch of clean versions. I'm sure that's why they're doing it. Let's see, let's test the waters with this. But I just thought it was interesting that someone called to say, you made decisions, just like you just said 5 minutes ago, that I would never have thought to do. And that's because Kendrick, his team, people like me, are making sonic choices based on taste. And I'm not doing it because I think I'm supposed to do something. I'm doing it because this is how I hear music. And then that brings us to the conversation of that's why people get hired for their taste. And it's not going to work for everybody. There's no one size fits all mix style. It's about understanding arrangement. It's about understanding music and genre. And I think Kendrick crossing all of these sonic, the spectrum of genre that is folded down into this 2-part album with a lot of people on it, but one through line, which is him, is the taste, is understanding how to make that synth-driven record work, how to make that drum machine dance record work, next to an 808-driven record just before it. I think there's a lot to say about vision there, right? And vision is inherent. I don't think you think about vision. I think vision just is, and you have it, and you stay on track. And someone's got to stay on track, and that's how you finish the album. Someone or a team stays on track. If it doesn't fit the criteria, we don't make an excuse for why it could still be okay. You make it fit the criteria or it doesn't make the record, and you don't get the text that you're on a Kendrick album.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also think it's hilarious that about 90 seconds ago, somebody said, what do you guys think of the Kendrick album? You must have just tuned in because we spent the first 26 minutes talking about it. So watch it again. It'll, you can watch it or watch it on YouTube or listen to audio or whatever. It's an interesting point you make, and I've been thinking about this more because I've been hearing more mixes of big artists, including stuff that you're doing, that aren't quite as bright. And I really like that. And I think there's an era of mixing that young mixers did not come up in that they should check out, which is like that, like late 90s, early 2000s, like Rich Costey, some of the best Chad Blake stuff, Eric Valentine, a lot of these mixes that where the vocal is not hyped and yet sits really clearly in the mid-range around dense guitars and really mid-rangey drums, and everything feels mid-rangey. Or Mr. Brightside, for example, like these mixes
so good.
That aren't this like scooped heavy hip hop era mixing that's all mid-range, and yet the clarity is really brilliant. And I think a lot of people should go back and check those out. Like the first couple Muse albums, again, really any of the Eric Valentine stuff, like Songs for the Deaf, or the Good Charlotte stuff. Yeah. A lot of that Chad Blake, the Arctic Monkey stuff. Like there's so many of those era, Fiona Apple records. Like there's that I think that's all Rich Costi, or at least the first couple. There's an era of mid-range that is really powerful because it's a lot of like mid-range drum compression.
He's known for being really additive into compression and saturation, into de-essing. Yes. He's known to be boosting high amounts of volume into dynamic processing. And that's kind of how he gets that up against the glass energy, that just before it's too much thing. Yeah. I think it's really cool. Like I used to study that and follow that. It's very much not my style. But understanding it when it's necessary.
Really well. They translate really well because, again, there's a lot of, even though we're getting to an era with a lot of systems that have bright high end and big low end and that sort of thing, when you're listening to something across the room, it's mid-range that comes out. So getting your mid-range right without too much hype, because I definitely will hear things like On at a Restaurant and hear like a record from 15 or 20 years ago that has a great mix and everything's clear and you can hear the vocal and you can hear the piano or the guitar. You know, you talk about like the cello frequencies. You could hear these from somewhere between 300 and 3K. Everything feels like it has its own place. And then you hear a modern mix and you just hear all the high end is just and you just don't hear clarity. So there's something about the mid-range that I don't know, I find really interesting. And again, back to the Kendrick album, it works really well. You hear a lot of piano, you hear a lot of strings.
There's no noise on that album. There's no unnecessary build up anywhere.
Yeah.
It's not really like all of that. What you're talking about sounds like noise. It sounds like an EQ on a sound that there's nothing there already, and you're boosting nothing. And if everything is boosting high end, most sounds don't have that much high end, so you're just boosting noise lore. If you're using some sort of like Spectre, for example, that has like some saturation in there, you're boosting fakeness. You're boosting non-existent air that people like to call, I need some more air. It's like, that's not air. That's nothing. There's nothing in a guitar above 7K. Like there's nothing there. So filter it down and let there be space for everything else. And like, this is a very opinionated tone of voice and perspective. And I'm okay with that, because do it for yourself. Look at a guitar analyzer. If there's anything above there on a well-recorded electric guitar, distorted, by all means boost more of it, but you won't see much above there. So get that out of the way, give yourself headroom for things that are coming above there, like the vocal, like the hi-hat. I would argue you can even turn the hi-hat down to that much. The Kendrick hi-hats are not bright. The Pusha T hi-hats on his record, on his hip-hop focused records, are not bright. And then you go to the Jack Harlow record and the hi-hats are fucking bright. And it's like, why the fuck are the hi-hats so bright? Like, I don't understand why the hi-hats need to be so bright on a hip-hop record. It's not, I don't know. Don't get it.
Something that Baines
I can hate on this for a long time. So the hi-hats thing is a weird one for me. Is hi-hats inherently are not bright. They're usually in the records that I think stand the test of time and have done extremely well for themselves. The hi-hats are thicker and have more length to them, more groove to them, and it's not about the ticky stuff. It's never been about that. So I don't know why all of a sudden they are about that.
Yeah, it's funny. A role model just
it's like a ring modulator or something.
He said, turn down all hi-hats, and then said, in fact, get rid of all hi-hats. I think something that Baines said at some point too. He said all the rough mixes from producers, the hi-hats are always too loud. Everybody always has the hi-hats too loud. I haven't really thought about that before, but it does make sense, and I'm sure that my hi-hats are too loud too. But it is interesting. And again, that's another element of high-end fatigue. If hi-hats are loud all the time, you just have this constant, it's just going to,
and then your ears get used to it. and then think it's okay to leave them there, and that's what causes the demoitis of the hi-hats need to be stay as loud. So when the mixer, when you know Manny gets the Kendrick mix and the hi-hats are too loud, he gets to turn them down because he's Manny. But if it was someone else, they might be like, why are you doing that? Why did you turn my hi-hats down? It's like, well, don't you feel the groove bounce more without this like fucking demanding your attention? I can't even hear what the fucking rapper is saying about whatever is going on in their life. And like, hi-hat's sick. It's like, what? I don't understand. You know, everybody has their tweeter in their car stereo or their fucking phone or whatever system like turned up anyway. So the hi-hats are always going to be brighter later.
You're going to hear them. You're going to hear them.
You know what I mean? Actually, that's a really good, I haven't really thought about just that in general. You're going to hear them, so turn them down. They're the shortest length element of a record. The threshold of that ear is going to be crossed by that transient faster than almost everything else, but maybe a vocal consonant. So turn them down and let other things speak. Let's just fucking turn down the hi-hats.
Well, again, it gets to some of my favorite hi-hats in hip hop tend to be break beats or lo-fi things like Dirt Off Your Shoulder, where it's like the hi-hat is way pitched down, or like
and that shit goes in a club for the person that just said the sizzle is just right. Like, you know what I mean? No, that's not true. Dirt Off Your Shoulder goes harder than so many things in the club.
You know what? I'm going to make a parallel. Those Rich Costey Muse records and Dirt Off Your Shoulder, people should go listen to those back and forth and realize, okay, there's like a dark heaviness in the drums, and then the vocals get this clarity, and the whole record doesn't have to be super bright, and it translates everywhere and sounds huge on every system. Yeah, that's a fantastic. Or like Kanye Runaway or something like that, where huge low end that it's the Expo '83 Pete Rock CL Smooth sample that main classic drum break,
so much
where it's
texture.
Not super bright and so much density and so much low end, huge low end. It's just magical. I just want to make records that sound like that.
If you put too much high end on a record like that, you ruin the bounce.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So boosting high end a lot of the time straightens out groove to the point where it's inhumane.
That's an interesting point, but boosting too much high end will lose the bounce of a groove for sure. Because then you're just, again, it's that static high end thing that you need to have dynamics in. Again, dynamics in almost every respect is what, again, going back to the Kendrick, is what makes this album so incredible, is that it's dynamics emotionally, dynamics sonically, dynamics frequency wise, dynamics instrument wise, topic wise.
Yeah.
Just absolutely fantastic. I feel like we should just talk about Kendrick for another 20 minutes. I know. Are there any questions that we need to hit? I mean, you know, need is a relative thing, but I'm always trying to service a question or two.
If there's one thing to take away from the Kendrick album and from our conversation today, it's lower your hi-hats.
Lower your hi-hats and go listen to that album. It's really good. But one of the Discord questions was favorite reference tracks or albums lately. I feel like we've covered quite a bit of that right there.
Yeah, I'll add to this list also mixed by Manny. I really like the new Lizzo mix.
I haven't heard that.
Shit, I forgot the name of it. I feel bad that I just said that and I don't remember the name of the song. But it's whatever one is charting and doing really well with Terrace Martin's on it, and it sounds warm. It's a disco record. The mix is incredible. It's one of Manny's best mixes, in my opinion, in a long time. And before Kendrick came out, it was one of the first to inspire me sonically in quite a bit.
Oh, somebody asked about the Bad Bunny album. I actually have not listened to it yet. I cannot wait to. I really like his records. And shout out to my buddy Mick Coogan, who has a couple of the songs on it, including the big single, one of my oldest friends in music, who's like getting his due and being amazing. Shout out Mick Coogan.
Nice.
Him and Mag did a bunch of the record and just killing it. I'm so proud of him and like so happy for his success. We used to run around LA together as children, and he's having a big hit. It's his first really big hit, so that's amazing. But I'm a big Bad Bunny fan. Honestly, Kendrick came out and I just listened to Kendrick, and I've been waiting for Bad Bunny, who I love. I mean, I listened to that last Bad Bunny album a ton. So I'm looking forward to that. So maybe we'll talk about that next week.
I could do some homework.
Yeah, he's such an interesting artist.
Josh Goodwin mixed that, if not all of it, most of it, I guess.
Oh, nice.
But,
nice.
Yeah.
Somebody on the Discord asked about defining moments of your career and then how do you leverage success to get more work? And I like this idea of, you know, there's always questions about how do you get more work? How do you meet people? How do you meet A&Rs? How do you get your work out there? And, you know, there's a million answers for that. And we've answered that question a lot. But I do like the question specifically of how have you specifically leveraged things in your career to get more work? I think one thing that I'll say, and maybe you have a story, maybe you can rip off it, or maybe it's a short answer, I don't know. But when you do something that works, when you do something where everybody feels good at the end of the project and then it comes out and people are responding to it and it has success in whatever capacity it is. For me, when I was first starting out, it was making a record with local bands that all the local bands were like, holy shit, this is great. Or whether it's having a big hit with One Direction or my first Andy Grammer thing or whatever. As soon as you do something that does well in whatever capacity, do whatever you can to double and triple down with that team. There's a few things that I think people can do. One of them is, you know, if you do something that has success, a bunch of people will come to you for that thing. That's always been tough for me because I don't want to repeat myself and do the same shit over. Like when I had the first song that was like a decent size hit, this Andy Grammer song, Fine by Me, a bunch of people came to me and said, I want that song. And I was like, I guess this is what you do. And then I tried to do versions of that a couple times and it just sucked and it was miserable because I was like trying to copy myself and that's not how the song was made. And so it was a learning experience for me. So that hasn't worked very well for me. It does work well for some other people, especially if you're a producer and have a particular sound, or maybe if you're a mix engineer and you do a particular thing, to like then go do that thing a lot. If you can do it and it makes you happy, definitely double down on that. But the other way is with the same team and with the same people. And I think a lot of the people who have great careers in music, and again, it started out with me the first time when I was a teenager working with local bands. It's like, if you make a record with a local artist and all the other local artists love it, go make all the records with that artist, with their friends, like accumulate around the thing that does well and try to double and triple down with those same people. That happened to me with the One Direction stuff as well. And Tyler Brown, who was the day-to-day A&R at the time, I made 20 more records with him, hits with Little Mix, more One Direction stuff. He's now managing this artist, Renow, who I've done a bunch of things with. That all comes from working with, having success early on. Again, however you define it, it could even mean this is the best thing the artist has done and they're an unknown artist and everybody had a great time. Go do more. It's like the repeat business and the compound relationships, as we talk about, I think is the best way to do that. So as soon as you have success with something, I think doubling down with the team, if you've got along with them, you made good work. I think that's one of the big keys. So I don't know. I just wanted to speak specifically on that. I don't know if you have thoughts on that.
No, I agree. I wanted to say something about like you can't repeat yourself. I think there's a difference that we should articulate between a songwriter, producer repeating themselves and an engineer who should maintain some sort of consistency in their output. I think it's a different business model and we should just point that out. At the same time, every song is different and deserves its own approach and treatment. And like I said earlier, like leaving things alone sometimes is the hardest thing to do, but that's sometimes your job. A lot of the times that's your job, and not feeling like you need to touch every sound. And I'm guilty of that because I do that. I just put a limiter on every sound just to see what's there. Sometimes it doesn't make the cut. I just like do it to see what's there. And I'm definitely a tweaker. So I'm guilty of that and trying to get better at it. But I think the success thing that you're talking about, it's really on other people. It's not really on you. People are going to ask, and then you're going to deliver what you deliver, and what you deliver is not always going to be what other people want, right? So the best thing you can do is come at it the same way, come at it with the same intention behind it, the same excitement and enthusiasm for what made that song a success, recognizing what made the thing that people are now coming to you for work. Was it the production? Was it, for me, like, was it the mix, or was it the production that it was a layup, and I just took it over the top because it was already there? Did I have to heavy lift? Did they come to me for my heavy lifting? Did they come to me for just the communication and authority of saying this is done, and a trusted ear? Like, what was the reason why success occurred, and what role did you play in it? And I think replicating that role is probably always one of the few things that is always should be the case.
Yes. And I just want to make a distinction between repeating yourself, like, to people that you've never worked with before. They look at something you've done and say, I want that. I actually think that's harder. It can work more for mixers, for sure. It's a different business model. It's harder as a producer for someone to be like, I like that song you did. Can you give me that song again? And it's hard because it's like, well, the song is really not just something that I did, but it was a collaboration with people that worked. And so I actually think the other side of it is working with the people again. If you have success in whatever capacity, whoever you had the success with, that's the thing I think to double down on. There's people that I've worked with for years where when they call me, like, for example, Tyler Brown, who I was saying, who's been an A&R and a manager, and he's got a great ear, and he and I are great friends. When he calls me, I basically just say yes, because I've worked with him so much.
Right.
I trust his ear. Sometimes it's a lot of money up front. Sometimes it's no money up front. And, some percentage of the time, things don't go anywhere. But that's okay, because I understand, one, I'm going to have a good time with him. He's got good taste. And we have a relationship for a long time. And I'm pretty much just going to say yes, because that's part of having a career, is working consistently with people over a long period. So as soon as you have success with people, if you liked the process and the result was good, that's how you parlay into having a career, is trying to double down on those relationships more than other people come, and which is also good. People coming to you and saying, like, I like that song you did. Can you do more of that? That can work for people. It can not work for people. It definitely works more as a mixer. But in terms of relationships, I think that's the important distinction I wanted to make.
Yeah, I think you're 100% accurate. I think it's all about the relationships and maintaining them. I think sometimes as a young mixer, I struggle with that, because my story is always part of making someone success, and then they have the success and they get to go wherever they want, and they choose someone that's been giving other people success for 30 years, and I can't fault them for that.
Yeah, and that happened to me too as a producer, for sure.
Yeah, so it's definitely hard to double down all the time on that when you want to do that more than anything, and to repeat success with the same team. Like, that's what you want to do. That's what we all want to do. We want to find a crew of people that we work best with and keep doing it. Anybody that tells you otherwise is probably lying. That's the most comforting situation, in a good way, not the out of the comfort zone that we talk in a positive way about, like the other way, where it just feels the best to collaborate and feel good in your own skin when you're around those people, creatively speaking.
And it's an interesting it's evidence of what we're talking about, which is that sometimes it doesn't work, because if you're starting early with an artist and then they blow up, a bunch of other people want to work with them. And sometimes you don't get the gig when they get bigger, but that's also evidence of why you want to try to double down with people, because if you do good work, it's likely that the various people on the team are going to continue to do work. And whether that's you and the artist and they're going to do great stuff, or it's the management team, or it's the label, or whatever it is, when people have success, it's much more likely they will have more success. So trying to double down on that is great.
It's also should be, I never really thought about it from this perspective, but it's probably also good to recognize that if you don't continue that relationship for whatever reason, you were still a part of that, and it should give you some sort of validation. That 100%. You're part of a record that did something, and remember that going into the next time you're trying to develop new relationships and develop a new artist. Because I think when you talk to a label, anybody on a label team, if they're in it for the right reasons, they're constantly interested in developing new talent, right? Like, that's where you want to be, right? Your next, the next part of your story that you've said to me on this platform is that you want to break an artist. And I think that if you've done it once, you can do it again, and you can do it again, and you can do it again. And I think being part of the breaking of the artist story is equally as interesting to maintaining that relationship, because people are going to find new collaborators, and especially artists, especially 17, 18, 19-year-old kids. you know, they're just like, oh, that person did this. And it's like, oh, I want to go work with that person. Like, why not? You know, why wouldn't they want to? I think it would be cool if they brought those new additions to the team back into the original team a lot of the time and added to the collaborative process. But that's not always the case because kids are kids.
Yeah. And there's a question up here, which I just was, Noah asked, have you ever turned down a good opportunity, or do you take every one? The longer you work, you are going to turn down things that end up being successful. And that's just part of the game. I mean, I try to take everything that looks interesting, but there's only so many hours in the day, and you got to live your life. And I miss things. I turn down things. I've taken shots at things where somebody said, here, please produce this. And I do a version of it, and then I don't hear from him. And then somebody else does it and it's successful. I've had that with multiple artists.
Me too.
That's just the way things go. You know, maybe at some point, it actually would be interesting at some point for us to break down the things that we've missed, just so people like feel okay about that, because I've missed a bunch of stuff. There's a bunch of artists where like they gave me the song and I did the song and we went back and forth and then they just disappeared and then somebody else produced it. Like that happens. And it's okay. And the more you exist in the industry, the more you're going to be like, I don't really know if I really want to do that. I don't really have time. And then something gets huge and you're like, fuck, I should have done that. I should have figured it out. That's just part of life.
I've definitely mixed songs that come out 2 weeks later and it's not my mix and I never heard back.
We'll do a full episode of that, because I don't know, a full episode.
Yeah, I don't necessarily want to do an episode calling that out specifically, though. We can talk about that. We've experienced it, but I wouldn't want to say who it was necessarily.
I want to say who it is on a bunch of things, but maybe another time. Maybe we'll talk about it. Okay. Well, it is funny. Like, there's so many things I want to reveal about the music industry, but I also don't want to. It's, you know, all of these things that we do are not just us. It's us in collaboration with a bunch of other people, and so I don't want to just be outing people, not from some like, oh, it's going to hurt the relationship. It's just like, it's not all my business. It's other people's business too. But I think people would find it really interesting. So maybe
it's honest.
We'll do that. So maybe we'll do some of that at some point. I think that would be cool. There's a couple of little questions. I wanted to just hit this one on the Discord. Somebody asked, how do you deal with editing while producing and recording? How much do you, this is me paraphrasing, how much do you try to get it right in the moment, but not slowing down the session too much?
Good question.
Yeah. I mean, there's no answer to that. The answer is you got to find the balance. I mean, I certainly, when I was starting out doing writing sessions, I was spending way too much time trying to get a drum sound right, or trying to get be like taking 10 minutes to find the right snare. And it's just like, what are you doing? This is a writing session. Don't worry about any of that. I think this person may be talking more about like tracking musicians and things like that. And that's a harder answer. I mean, it comes through experience. Oftentimes when I'm cutting, when you're writing a song and you have a day with an artist, it took me a while to realize all I really need to do is get a great vocal and some ad-libs, and I can do everything else after the fact. It doesn't matter. I can change the tempo. I can change the instrumentation. Sure, there are things that, like, there's rhythmic things, and sometimes you get a vocal on a certain beat and then you switch the production and it doesn't work. And that's, again, the more records you make, the more experience you have knowing what you can and can't do after the fact. And there's just there's no answer to that other than it comes from experience. And people still don't get it right. Like, if I have a day with an artist, I have to get a vocal out of them. And even if the track isn't quite there, I get the vocal. I mean, that's really the thing, is I get the vocal by the end of the day.
You might never see them again.
I might never see them again. And by the way, and it does happen sometimes, but there's always conversation like, oh, you're in town for another, we can come in and get an hour. And that doesn't happen nearly as much as you think it does. Everybody's excited in the room. Oh, we're going to do a bunch more. It's cool. You're in town. It happens much more rarely than the confidence people have in a session. So I just basically get the vocal. And to be honest, like, one of my skills as a writer, producer, record maker, whatever, is I can comp the shit out of a vocal, and I can get a whole lot out of minimal vocals. And that skill set has served me very, very well. And I think that's actually the biggest thing. If you have a day with an artist, get a vocal and get great at editing vocals, comping vocals, knowing what you can do after. And that's really the experience that I think has separated me in times when, you know, I have a 4-hour session with an artist and we're doing something from scratch. I prep, I get some drum sounds, I get some keys, I have go-tos, I'm not worried about the track, but then you get everything you can get and just, you know, experience tells you what you can do after the fact.
Yeah, and don't have an end of day bounce for them.
Hell no.
So that's where you know what I mean? And I think you're just, if it feels too long, it's been too long. If you feel like you're spending too long on a sound or an edit, it's been too long and everybody knows it.
Everybody knows it. You're just wasting time. People keep asking about the live vocal comp. I know. I'm going to do it. I have approval from the writer. I have a session. I've just been busy. As I always say, I've been busy with my day job of making records. I really plan to do this vocal comp on Twitch or whatever it is. I'm really sorry I haven't done it. I love this community.
I've been loving
and people keep asking
the live Twitches. It's been so fun.
Yeah, you've done
do it.
2 or 3 now. How many have you done?
3 now.
3, yeah. People were asking me questions this week about something with your busing and your sub busing. I was like, he's done live.
Go there.
Streams. Go to the Twitch. John can show you all this stuff. I don't need to answer that question.
Yeah.
Hey, what up, Josh? I'm about to listen to that Bad Bunny record. I hear it's great.
Hey, what up?
I don't know. There's a couple other little questions, but that feels good to me. I feel like it's a good.
I have to go pee. Can we call it here?
Yeah, I think we can call it here. I'm glad we made this work. I'm going to be in London next week. We will make it work. I'll just figure it out, and we'll be back next week and do some more. Thank you guys as always. I'm gonna go jump on the Discord after. And John, love you. It's good to see your face.
Love you. Bye.
I'll see you soon, man.
Bye, guys.
Thanks, guys. Bye bye.